say anything, you can sneak in some below that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Gets more and more fun every day.
I call our meeting to, Finance Committee meeting to order Tuesday, January 8th, 4 o'clock. We have a quorum. I believe that we are on camera, and I have been pleasantly surprised that a number of people do watch. So that's a cautionary note as much as anything. So, do we have any public comment this evening? Mr. Bamber, do you have anything you want to say, or? Please come up to the microphone. We've just been admonished to speak into the microphone, identify yourself, and,
It's Ron Bamber, Washington Pond Road. Someone mentioned that someone was going to have an oversee committee or something, or mention something. Or is there anything on the agenda
an
for
overseas
for a
committee?
finance thing to oversee whatever, or have an idea of what?
An Uber committee? Do you want us to be the Uber committee for the
No,
town?
I don't know.
I think he's referring to the complaints committee.
Oh, the
Complaints
okay,
committee?
yeah. Oversee, yeah. I think it might not be a bad idea.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, we're going to get to that. So if you hang in,
Okay,
when we get to it, I'd ask you to come up and make whatever comments you want to make
all right,
after we talk about it.
good.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Before we get started, we have some minutes, which you have just received, so I understand if people want to defer approval to our next meeting, which I think is next week, right, Ally? Monday, okay. But if people want to approve them,
Well, just skimming through them, there is a comment attributed to me on Article K, the discussion with, I think it was the proposer, Mr. Cole, on the marijuana. And there's a comment says that he wants the annual town meeting to approve, anyway, I didn't say that.
okay.
I don't know who did, but it wasn't me.
All right, why don't, given that, why don't we defer approval until next week? And if people would review them and there are corrections to be made, we'll pass that along. I do want to call everyone's attention to the fact that we are going to do our Saturday session again. And it is going to be on the, I want to say the 28th, but let me, the 26th, starting at 8:30. Ally, I was talking with Chief Pittman today, and that information has not reached him. So I'm not sure if all the department heads know. So I think our plan is to probably do it the way we did it last year, 2 sessions, a session on Thursday with, you'd have to look at last year's agenda, but I think the water company, and what else did we do on
School?
Thursday, the school maybe?
The school was its own meeting.
Oh, okay, Brian, you may know the,
I think that the Thursday meeting you did, the water companies and the airport, because
Okay.
typically sewer and Ireland Home, we usually integrate into the Saturday meeting.
okay. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll do it again that way?
Okay.
And then the other thing that, for Peter, for your new, we've asked everybody to take 1 or 2 of the budgets and become buddy up with somebody on the committee and become the 2 people that really understand what's in the budget and lead our discussion on that. So it lightens the burden on the rest of the committee to have to read all of the budgets. So if that's acceptable, do you want me to make assignments, or would people like to volunteer for
Why
their?
don't you just go down and listen to assignment, that's, just as
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to do either the ones I did last year, or just, yeah, if you want to just,
Yeah.
just tell
The
us.
same, I can do the ones I did
Okay,
last year.
so
as
why don't
well.
I do this? I'll go through last year's assignments and push them out if it makes sense.
Yeah.
McEachern is not going to be here for the meeting, and I'm not sure whether to plan on Henry or not, so I'll probably not plan on Henry, but I think every 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, so we just need to make sure we've got 5 for that meeting.
I'm here for sure.
I'm here for sure.
Okay. Peter, you're
For
here
the Saturday meeting?
Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You're here, I suspect.
Bringing the coffee, so
All right,
better be here.
Should I drive you?
okay. That's great. So if we could just make sure that the department heads know that this is going to happen. And same formats, you probably have got them using the same formats anyway, is that correct? Yes?
Yeah, the same, we've been building them with the same format, which is the PowerPoint, the budgets, and then the exception page, which
Okay.
notes anything over, I forget what we've agreed to, but whatever, it's back on every sheet already.
And
so-
given that we're going to only see the capital like 3 days ahead of that, 23rd, do I have that right?
Yes.
Got changed again?
We're working on, there's some reconciliation that the committee, Capcom, would like to be done between our recommendations, so they've asked for a little bit extra time.
Yeah. So would you just make sure there's a page on capital that,
There's actually on that one-page format that we had done
Yeah.
previously, this year, we've included at the bottom a list of the capital projects that are capital that's being recommended and at what funding level it's been recommended at.
great,
So it'll be there.
terrific.
So do we have the joint meeting on the 16th?
Just
I'm sorry.
to
Do we
make
have
sure
the
Terry's
joint meeting on the
happy.
16th?
I had asked the town manager at the request of the Capcom chairman if we could postpone it till the 23rd.
Okay.
And evidently, Mr. Chairman knows that it has already been done. I hadn't heard whether it
I
had been
think
done.
we know
but-
too, but I'm getting
Okay.
confused between the 9th and the 16th and
So
not the 16th and the 23rd.
if it has been agreed to, then it's going to be presented at the 23rd select board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Okay. So this afternoon, if everybody's willing, I'd like to push through as many of the citizens' articles that we can take votes on. And once we've done with that, unless there's a bunch of other discussion, we can adjourn. So, okay?
Yes.
So first up, and why don't we take them both A and C, which is the CPC, both the appropriation and the, well, we'll vote them separately, so we'll come back to the transfers. But the CPC recommendations for this year,
Make a motion to support the appropriations as they are presented.
okay. Just a little bit of discussion. Bogran sent to me, and I had it included in the minutes that you don't have in your packet, a letter about Academy Hill, which is now in the record about what their intent is. I think they readily acknowledge that where they ended up this year is a little different than what they told us last year. That's a moot point at this point, but they are now on the record that that Hall Keem and the Academy Hill appropriation is the last we've seen. So,
I might have missed it, but I think Steve was on the committee. Did you ever give us a rundown of that whole contract and how it was redone, what we're doing?
The Finance Committee was not invited to participate in the negotiation of the new lease with Hal Keane for that building. The first, I think I'd seen of it, not that it maybe wasn't available before, but the first I saw of any portion of that lease was the excerpt that Ken included in his letter, which showed that the town obligated itself to pay $457,000, I think was the number,
Right.
to repair some windows, which is whatever that dollar amount was. It was that entire amount more than what the town initially obligated itself to pay 40 years ago when it gave the lease of the building to Hal Keane for $1. It's also more than the Finance Committee was made aware that the town would be obligating itself to pay 2 years ago when this was up for discussion, when we talked about the first set of windows that were to be replaced. Ken and I spoke on another matter, and he told me that he was sending this letter, which we've all read now, and I think that's great that he did that, and I appreciate it. But it doesn't make me feel any better about what happened.
So noted.
yeah.
So going forward, are we going to have oversight on the lease? 'Cause it seemed like it was just a rudderless ship.
No.
I don't think so.
No?
But I think one would presume that the renegotiation of the terms now sets how it's going to go forward, but
And not in our favor.
No.
So remember that when we start talking about other housing initiatives, and we're going to find somebody who's going to take care of these properties for us, they can give us as good a deal as to say, just give us the property and we'll take it over, and we promise not to come back to you for any help operating, but they'll come back. And, we've got 3 years now of precedent that says, when you come back, we'll bend. So just, keep that in mind.
okay. Any other discussion?
No.
So I sit on the board of the NHA, and they have 2 proposals that have been recommended, so I'm going to recuse myself from this vote. So Stephen, I'm going to step down. Stephen, would you finish it off, please?
Sure. Is there any more discussion on the motion that we have before us? No?
Nope.
And we have a second, I believe. Then I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We hardly had a chance to miss you, David.
Warms my heart.
David was what?
The next article on the CPC is some transfers and of residual monies to do some housekeeping, I believe. I don't think we have that in our packet, but,
0.6 cents? Yes, we do.
okay,
They're
Thank you.
They're very accurate record keepers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
there it is, yeah.
Costs more to type that up than it did to.
It's 50-cent one.
Okay. So can I have a motions to approve the transfers?
Motion to adopt?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Zoning. Ian Golding. We agreed yesterday to wait for town recommendations on this. Zoning. Height limitations, we really didn't discuss. Stephen, I defer to you. It looked like it was language cleanup. Was there anything hidden in Arthur's?
No, there wasn't. I believe what this is bringing all parts of the town code in line with one another. Right now, you have to go to the ZBA to get a variance for something that's allowed in other parts of the town bylaw. FEMA dictates how high the first floor of a building must be in a floodplain. And there's been special allowance waivers to the maximum ridge height in those areas to allow people to raise their houses when they renovate or new construction. So this would allow these things to happen by right, so you don't have to go to the ZBA, which just adds extra cost and bogs down the zoning board of appeals system. So there's nothing hidden that I could find anyway.
Okay.
It appeared to be, when I tried to see the difference, was they added structures in certain flood zones. And that's the only difference between the 2 paragraphs. But I didn't do a, word for word match, but it appeared that was the only change. So I kept trying to see what the
Well,
difference was.
is this real estate related in the sense that the planning board will come back with some thumbs up or thumbs down on this? Or is this part from those articles?
As I understand it already, these approvals lie with the ZBA. That's not to say that the planning board isn't going to have some opinion on it, but this isn't part of their process now, and this would sort of not be part of anybody's process going forward.
Okay.
So I guess if they do take it up as well,
Yeah, we could always
visit, but
right.
is there a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Adopt?
Second.
Any further discussion? Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The ambulance transport fund, behavioral health patients. Where do you want to go with this?
This reminds me of a few years ago when I was in Denise's seat on the contract review committee, and we, for months, reviewed a particular applicant's budget and determined that the need was there, but the applicant, the proposed recipient of the town's money, was not good with their own money, and therefore shouldn't receive the town's money. That's not to say that this applicant might not be good with the money, but the point of the story is when we recommended a lower amount, we were
Taken to task.
taken to task not only by town meeting voters, but also by members of the Board of Selectmen. You know, our role as an advisory to the Finance Committee and to the Board of Selectmen was was not appreciated, I'll say, after a lot of good and hard work. I think something like that is likely to happen here, where we're going to, say this isn't the town's responsibility. Town meeting voters will say, yeah, but,
It's the
we have a
community's
bunch of money and, somebody needs to pay for this. I'd like to see some other community organizations step up in the future. But if you all believe, as David suggested yesterday, and I concur, that this is likely to be funded, let's figure out the funding mechanism that's likely to cause the least trouble for the town.
Why don't I take the opposite, just play devil's advocate? I mean, I think, I sort of agree with everything you said, and I think politically, this is the kind of article that town meeting would feel sympathetic to and very likely could approve. But I also agree with what I think what David said yesterday, and I'm not sure this is a town budget responsibility, and that while there is clearly a need and a growing need, I'm not sure that this group has pursued other funding sources that might be available here on the island or within the Commonwealth before simply saying, well, we're throwing ourselves on the mercy of town meeting and please include this in the town's budget. I think you raise a good point, Stephen, that the FinCom could take a negative approach to this and then sort of get, well, overturned as we've been before, but I think that may be the right, I don't know, it seems to me that might be the right
Maybe
fiscal and, fiscal position to take, despite the fact that town meeting may not look at it that way.
maybe both things can be true. Maybe the recommendation is don't fund it, and maybe the comment is if you're going to fund it, this is where we think the money should come from. I don't know if that means anything, but
I think that, I do think this will pass on the town meeting floor. I think people are going to be very sympathetic to it. I've already heard some people talking about that it seems elitist, that we wouldn't pay for this, right? And it seems not to support the year-round community. And so the thing that I'm disappointed about is the hospital, right? They have completely shirked their responsibility in this, and they are able to raise tons and tons of money for anything else they want, but they can't raise $100,000 for this. So that really bothers me.
But remember that the hospital is also asking for the social services department to be funded through the contract review committee. So they don't fund anything they want to fund.
So who's paying for this if they don't have insurance and they're getting the service? Who's paying for it?
Well, right now, it looks like the bill's going to the hospital.
It gets
However,
funded out of their free
what
cash
we
somehow.
what we did hear was that Jim Perlman transports people on blankets in the back of his van off island. So, that's a workaround that strikes me as being rather.
Not a great one.
I'll reserve my opinion about whether it's a good one or not. But clearly the service is getting delivered. It's just, is it befitting of a community like ours and with all the resources, probably not. To me, and I'm going to turn to Brian here for a minute, to me, the short-term answer is, let's figure out how to get $100,000 and get this cleaned up. With no commitment of the town to do this again. We're not committing our fire department, our EMTs to stepping in to this business because it's not appropriate, and put the onus back on these guys and try to find some help. I mean, I was struck by the fact that I thought that Mr. Wieners was absolutely good-natured and good-hearted, but was naive about how to put an organization together to fundraise around this and to and my subsequent probing has discovered that there's perhaps doesn't work as well as all of this doesn't work. That's a possibility because I do think this will get approved on town meeting floor.
I do too. And I think there's probably some other money around that could fund this. To your point, I don't think it was well organized, and I think the hospital could have been more gracious.
Well, I think the hospital needs to be engaged in a conversation about this and
Has the excise tax that's going to go on the marijuana sales, a portion of that needs to be dedicated, I think, to
I knew you were going to say that.
50%.
yeah.
So you're talking about something that we actually haven't fully started even collecting, and DOR's opinion more than likely is going to be if you haven't started collecting it, then you can't plan on spending it until you've actually begun collecting it, okay? Which is the same conversation that I had with them today in their initial discussion about the new short-term occupancy rental tax, okay? I don't believe that I'd be able to convince them with any substance to allow me to start estimating what that might be, to start planning for it in the future until we actually start collecting it. It's just that the marijuana tax was the same one that they used and said until you start it, more than likely will not allow you to start budgeting or including it in estimates until you start receiving it. So it really wouldn't be available to begin to even budget as anything in the budget for any of the uses until we actually start collecting it so that we can show them during the tax rate setting process that we do have it and it's there. As for this money, I'm sure that a lot of people watched the presentation that the town manager and myself made to the select board. Right now, we are $2,000 under the levy limit, and we have two very serious problems facing us with our island home and solid waste. And to the extent that it took a lot of work with DOR to set the tax rate for fiscal 19 because we were trying to raise revenue above what we had brought in last year. And it took a lot of effort amongst my staff and everybody to be able to hopefully they did set the tax rate. So we convinced them that we thought we could meet it, but we also did that with the caveat that if during the run-up to town meeting those numbers don't look like they're going to be there, that we will make transfers into those enterprise funds because we cannot have revenue deficits, which is one of the reasons why in that presentation we reserved $3.8 million of free cash to potentially cover any issues with those two enterprise funds. Now, if we have issues with them in fiscal 19, they are going to spill over into fiscal 20, and I don't have any more money to solve these problems right now. So I'm not, if this gets voted on town floor, I honestly have no idea where I'm going to get the money, is the short answer.
So help me with timing and how the DOR looks at things. So these marijuana establishments come up and get running in 2019, which I assume is the plan for at least one of them.
Right, it'll be dependent on timing because if we haven't started receiving any money in what would be the beginning of fiscal 20 before July 1st, then the likelihood that they would actually allow me to count it as a local estimated receipt and be able to use the difference to fund other things is not very good. It's going to be that they're going to want to see actual receipts of payments before we actually are able to begin planning for it. which is generally the way they've been in all of these. They're very conservative to.
Okay,
because-
so let's say at the end of the third quarter of the calendar year, we've got money in of fiscal 20
Yep.
in 19, at the end of 19's third quarter. There's money that has been received in the form of tax on marijuana. Are you allowed to spend it?
We would need a town meeting, we'd need a town meeting vote, town meeting to increase budgets, and before we did that, we'd probably have lengthy discussions with DOR on their comfort level with doing it, but my assumption in my discussions with them would be, provided I have the receipts in hand for that period, that they probably would be okay with it. But any spending of it would require a town meeting appropriation, because we would have to include it in the revenue budget calculation, so I couldn't just arbitrarily start spending it. Because it would be a fiscal 20 budget increase that we would do, and we'd have to budget that in local estimated receipts.
Well, we're currently in third quarter. I don't see a marijuana
No,
facility.
we're
A year
third
from
quarter
now.
of 2019.
I thought you meant third quarter 2019, this year.
Right.
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, wow.
And it's the calendar third quarter, not our fiscal third quarter. So
okay.
our FY20 budget goes
Yeah,
in on July
right.
1.
Right,
We'd have a calendar quarter to collect revenue.
I see what you're saying.
But he's saying
It's
that
first quarter fiscal
we
20.
can't spend it.
Okay,
We'd need an appropriation to be able to spend any money.
And you can't make an appropriation because you don't have any money in the
Right.
account. Could
Correct.
you make a zero appropriation and open a placeholder?
It's a good question.
It's a good question, but I generally probably say no. I couldn't.
You'd say maybe, wouldn't you, Brian?
No, I would say no. I mean, you can't authorize an expenditure with zero and then start spending money.
What
into
if we
it.
put a revolving fund in place?
We would need town meeting approval
Okay,
this year
which
to
is
do it,
coming
but
up.
you couldn't spend until you actually had receipts in it. So
Yeah,
Well, that's fine.
that's
But-
what we're talking about.
But I mean, from a practical standpoint, we do know that there will be at least some receipts from short-term home rentals. They will be significant, but even if we assume that they'll be very small, there will be something. And there will also be receipts from the marijuana tax.
I agree, but you have to remember that if there's a timing issue at play, because we're trying to set our tax rate sooner rather than waiting until all 350 other communities besides the one that sets it in July race to the door in December to set the tax rate. So it's all dependent on timing. I can have all of those receipts, but if the tax rate's set before that, I can't go back and have an appropriation using raise and appropriate via this. Once the tax rate's set, it has to come from other available funds. It can't be any local. I can't reallocate additional local estimated receipts. So
On the property tax, but if it's coming out of a
I could do a
non-property
transfer.
tax
I
rate.
could do a transfer from available funds within the budget, but I can't raise the budget unless we use free cash or something.
So what do we have $500,000 at the discretion of the finance committee for?
For unanticipated and unexpected, yes.
Well, it's unexpected that
that.
we, well, no, I disagree. I could make a cogent argument that this money is unexpected. This is an unexpected request for, I don't know what level of emergency Governor Baker or the president might have raised for the opiate crisis, but there is some official declaration. That's not a joke.
No.
I think that there's reason to, I think this falls under that category. I mean, these are people's lives, People need this money. Whether, the responsibility really lies with Partners Healthcare or not, the fact is people need this. And I do think that we have the ability to find the money.
one of my concerns with this would be, I don't believe that the homework's been done to find funding in an appropriate way. We throw the money at it this year for just the very right reason you just said, Stephen. And what is their motivation to get it organized for the following on years? So I would put, I don't see how we can put caveats on handing out the money, but I would be reluctant to start a funding cycle that then doesn't have someone that says, okay, well, you get it this time, again, it's life and death, therefore essential, and you do not get it again. So after this, it's down to you to get your fundraising in place, your da-da-da.
What if we split it? What if we told them they have to come up with $50,000?
Now, we just told, for the sake of saving ourselves the time of rehashing something that we've gone over the last 2 years, we just passed over a larger appropriation to replace windows for a for-profit company.
Right.
Just because we didn't want to talk about it. You know, the appropriate place for these guys to come get their money, yeah, it's through the contract review committee. Or maybe they could find a way through CPC. I'd like to think they could, but it probably doesn't fit one of their 3 buckets. There's some better place. So how do we make sure it doesn't come back in this form? We work with them, you know, and we say these are the places that you go to get it next year. But if they do come back next year, it would be a lot like this for-profit company that is coming to us for windows. And we've funded them 3 years out of 3.
So can I offer up maybe a middle ground here? Let's not take a vote on this. I certainly would be happy to reach out, and others may be as well, both to Keith and to Mr. Wieners, and talk with them about kind of what we're perhaps thinking about. I don't want to tie the committee down to a particular course of action, but that if we were to see something from them as to how they're going to tackle this problem in the out year, does that begin to answer
Yes.
our collective concerns
For
about?
me, it would.
Yes.
Is that a fair? Cliff, are you in on this one?
Yeah, but well, I mean, the concern about money, I mean, it would be just like the time the guy stood up about mosquitoes. It was just an override for $100,000. The town meeting decides they want to override it now. At least for this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going.
That's a viable alternative, is
Override for
suggest
this
that it's
year
an
is-
override.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other way to go about it. That's what Libby was suggesting yesterday.
Right. There's nothing more democratic than that. You get to vote on it, and then you get to vote on it again at the ballot.
It just seems like it'd be easier to deal with it without having to put it on the ballot.
Well, if you really want it to get funded, then you don't suggest that,
Yeah.
because it will get voted for. You know, it'll get approved at town meeting.
Yeah. And you're suggesting it might not get approved at the ballot?
It's easier to say no to
Yeah.
people in need at the ballot box. But that's what we're here to do. You know, we're the fiduciaries for town meeting. We're supposed to sit here with this large audience and read the tea leaves and guess what town meeting wants us to do, right? I think town meeting probably wants us to find the money.
I do too.
And then in the future, to protect future town meetings, we need to find out where to direct these people so that they don't have to come back to town meeting in the future. You know, where's the more appropriate funding source? But
So how do we craft, so how do we craft a motion that gets them the money, and at the same time, we deliver a message that this is kind of a one-time thing?
I think it's
What-
fairly lengthy, which, you know, in our terms is like 2 or 3 sentences. It says, this is not something that we do. We don't like the way this came to us, but recognizing the need, this is what we suggest. If town meeting, you know, if voters want to do this, this is where you get the money. But we don't like this structure.
I would suggest before we take that vote, that we just explore a little bit more with them to see what their plan is.
Yeah.
I mean, if you recall from our public hearing, you know, they work through the community fund, so they haven't set up their own organization. They really have no fundraising. I have spoken to somebody on the board of the hospital about this. I think there's more conversation that needs to be had with the hospital. It may not get us anywhere, but I think that provides us with a little bit more background when we do take the vote. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I will report back on Monday,
Okay.
assuming I can get the people, but I don't anticipate any problem doing that. Okay. Sewer district, Mr. Cole. Committee for Sensible Cannabis Policy.
How many marijuana committees are there now?
Well, right now, there's one for the, reviewing the RFQ, responses to the RFP. So there's that committee. And then
The new one
that Libby was talking about yesterday.
I just don't.
I think those are the same.
Committees.
yeah, that's,
Okay. I
Yeah, I just
I
don't
don't
think
know
we
what
need more
it
committees.
was
I-
going to do, but
really.
Yeah, I think if he wants to have input, there's many ways he can have input.
It's a committee basically deciding based on their opinion. I mean, there's no hard facts that they can substantiate any of that.
It doesn't fold back into anything.
No,
and sensible to you and me may
Yeah,
be
no, that
different
was my
than
question,
sensible
what's
to.
sensible?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Motion not to adopt?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. Thank you. Campbell Sutton's stop sign. Were we going to get Burns to weigh in on this, or
I think
do we
need-
just want to pitch it to them and take it
think-
out of?
I think the question was, we wanted to understand the cost.
I don't. You know, it was $100,000 to put 2 stop signs at every bike path intersection around the island.
No, this is the other stop sign.
No,
This is
I
Bartlett
know
stop
that.
sign.
So
Okay.
here we're
Vision
talking
guide.
about like 2 stop signs. So we're talking about like in the hundreds of dollars. That's not the reason that I don't want to do this.
I'm with you.
Now, I would like to find out the answer to the question that I asked the other day. Is the traffic data posted? I've heard it said that the town has traffic data from these intersections and they're not sharing it. I find that hard to believe, but I did ask the question, and I'd like to know if the traffic data is available somewhere that we can all review. You know, is there a reason that we need to do anything at all? Or is it just that people don't like to wait 8 cars, 12 cars at an intersection? That's not a great reason to put up, to build a rotary or 2 rotaries. You know, it does strike me as inconsistent with safety for children who need to cross the street that you would build a rotary. But this is not the way we plan traffic safety.
Isn't I thought the Rotary was still on the capital budget, and in fact, I thought it was sort of approved and funded and from a town meeting a couple of years ago, and it's just awaiting its turn. Brian, do you have any?
Well, I think it got defeated, but now they've found other money. There's state money or something.
Well, the Rotary projects have, not advanced past, excuse me, the preliminary funding for design effort on them. So there was money allocated for, I think there's been money allocated for 3 rotaries for 25% design effort. The 2 are capital projects that were advanced, would have completed design and allocated the remaining construction money, which, as everyone's aware, did not pass the ballot in either time, or actually didn't even get to be discussed at the special town meeting. So I don't know what the select board's inclination to do on that is, but the only money that's there is essentially for 25% design effort.
I think the only thing this benefits is if you're coming from Surfside, that guy seems to have to wait the longest to take a left on
To
the
turn
Bartlett
left
Road.
onto Bartlett, exactly.
Yeah, other than that, everybody else can kind of scoot, but,
Or if you're coming out of Bartlett and you're turning left,
yeah.
then you also can wait sometimes. And there are children that cross there, because I often stop to let the children go, obviously. And I think that's what will happen on town floor at the town meeting.
Yeah.
That people will say there's children and people aren't stopping, and
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a good idea to put a rotary or traffic circle or anything else there, but it's also not a good idea that anybody in a neighborhood can suggest that they know what's better than the town's traffic planner and planning departments.
Also, we should just let them give us their opinion.
Yeah, my opinion on this is that we pay Mike Burns to do the traffic planning, and
Let's see what he has to say.
it's town meeting floor and citizens articles to do this kind of thing, or is not the way to legislate or
No,
these kinds of things.
I hope that the Board of Selectmen will be putting forward some article relative to this, and that Mike Burns has a more compelling case than
He has in
the
past.
citizen. Well, and than that he's had in the past, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna wait to hear what Mike Burns has to say on this one. Or no?
I'm prepared to take a vote on it, but if that's not where everybody else is, happy to defer.
Yeah, I'm not
I
sure
wasn't
if
going to
Mike
call
Burns.
Mike Burns in to talk about this.
Yeah,
So just, our opinion is that the town has, this is not the right way to do traffic policy. That's what we pay Mike Burns to do.
Yeah,
Okay,
Motion not to adopt.
and we
Right,
can
okay.
include that on our comment.
okay.
So we have a motion not to adopt. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Ally, you're keeping record of these things. Thank you. Tobias stretch energy goal. Did we hear enough yesterday? We got another $100,000 request.
No, I'd very much like to hear what his feedback is from the Builders Association and maybe from some builders. I have a
Gotcha.
feeling that this has a more serious impact on building costs and on what is a very large percentage of our working economy than he's telling us it will.
Okay, we'll pass on M. N actually was the one that's got the $100,000 appropriation to it.
Yes.
Brian, I assume you do not have a source for this one either?
Just as a comment, I'm also struck that, well, I thought Tobias made some interesting points, and these are all sort of laudable. What is Lauren Sinatra? I mean, doesn't the town have an energy executive? I forget what her title is, but it seems to me that the town should have a position on these three ideas as well.
I believe she does.
I think I thought we were waiting to hear from her.
I think we're waiting to hear from Libby's report that will say what every relevant department of the town is suggesting in respect to the citizens' articles. I thought that was the discussion
I
yesterday.
spoke with Lauren today. I saw her on something else, and she's prepared to come and talk to us about this, but she has all the baseline data that he said we needed to gather. So she's got all the data about what our energy use is. What she doesn't have is she doesn't have a plan because she can't get cooperation from the department heads. So I'm not sure a consultant can get cooperation from a department head either, but it seems certainly, personally, this doesn't have to be completed in like 2 months.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was well within the capability of the energy office to actually roll this out without having to incrementally spend more money. Might it take 12 months? Yeah, but
We're a bit late to the game here. You know, there's a cap on the amount of money that's available to green energy communities, and it's $20 million. I think the number I gave you guys yesterday from the Green Energy Communities website was that 30% of the qualifying communities received any money at all.
Right.
The more communities that go into the fund, the fewer are likely to receive any substantial money. That's not to say that we shouldn't actively pursue, programs that will reduce the town's expenses and make us a greener community. But I don't know if the designation means so much. You know, if it's just about the funding, that's not compelling to me. If it's about saving energy, saving the planet, and saving money, all those things we can do without doing these things, or without doing them in this order, or whatever. So, again, the stretch energy code. I have my brother's in the building trades. He's more concerned about this. I asked him what this was. It sounds like it's going to be onerous on builders. And that has a direct impact on not just builders, on a whole range of trades, on a whole range of people. You know, if you can't add on a room to your house because you have to bring the whole thing up,
Code.
yeah, and not just to current code, but to this stretch code, that's a big deal. You know, older homes are harder to do that with. So I'd at least like to get a better sense of what that is before we go about trying to tick all the boxes on this set of requirements for something that ultimately may not be a boon for the town anyway.
Agreed, but M and P also have the, what's the right, characteristics of Tobias gets up at town meeting and talks about green this and energy that, and you could see people voting for him.
Yeah. Well, you know, frankly, if it's only the building community that cares about this, they need to do a good job at advocating for themselves and for their clients. I'm just, you know, raising a potential issue, which maybe it's not a big issue. I don't know, you know, but I think there's more to it than Tobias, you know, was telling us. I think he did a pretty good job at selling us on it's not a big deal and let's just go for it, and 351 other towns or whatever it was have done it. That all may be true, but not all those towns have the most pre-Civil War structures in the country. You know?
I think we went down this road about 10 years ago, and then we dropped it for some reason, so I thought.
Yeah, we did it in 2012
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
Lydia
we
was
did.
gonna come up with a reason why we kind of faded off into other direction.
because it had a whole onerous set of requirements in order to get, you know, what's turning out to be a relatively de minimis amount of money.
Right.
So, we're going to hold on M. How about on N? I mean, personally, I'm prepared to take a vote on N. I think this work can be done internally. I don't think that there's a need to spend $100,000 on it. And quite frankly, and I wasn't being facetious when I asked him about Vineyard Wind. He works for Vineyard Wind. They have money that's available that supposed to go to the Vineyard and Nantucket for projects because of community impact, and this is the perfect kind of project for somebody like that to fund.
Wait, isn't the cable proposed to run through the island of Nantucket?
No,
No?
no.
It was supposed to be a connection.
Tuckernuck Channel or a Muskeka Channel.
Oh, I thought there was a connection in Nantucket. No?
Nope. Maybe on the next round.
No. No, I wasn't joking. I thought that was the
No,
case. Not the
I
case.
know it was pursued, but I can tell you that
not
maybe
anymore.
on the next round that actually. So there were 3 more leases.
Yeah. Oh,
Signed.
right.
So
Um,
so
All right, so on Article N,
yes.
stretch of the municipal energy study,
well,
Yeah.
motion not to adopt?
Is there a second?
Second.
Have any more discussion on it?
yeah, I just wanted to clarify, David, you told us that you spoke with Lauren and she represented to you that she has all this information already?
What she doesn't have is the plan, and you would have to look at the legislation. Because
Right.
there is a plan to do a
Only
20%
respective to the green communities designation, but she does have this baseline information, so we could, on our own, go ahead and say, you know, this is what we need to do to reduce our energy. Because we know,
Exactly,
okay.
because we know. I asked her specifically if she had the baseline data. So,
Yeah.
because that, to me, when I looked quickly online and listened to Tobias, we needed to have the baseline information, which he represented we did not have,
Yeah.
in order to set our reduction. You know, it's a 20% reduction goal. You got to know where you're starting from.
Right.
And she represented today, I mean, I saw her at noontime, represented that she has all of that information, that what was stymieing her was getting the cooperation to actually put the program in place to get the reductions.
Yeah, got it.
And I know, speaking for Denise, I know both of us in our corporate lives have been through energy reductions and how they get done, and you know, some others may have done the same thing.
I was
but-
just sitting here thinking variable pay would be a good component here to have access to.
yeah,
It's
wouldn't it?
amazing how much motivation comes when your bonus is tied to it.
So did we vote that?
We didn't vote yet
So we have a motion
to not
not
adopt.
to adopt. I would suggest that we also need a little bit of a comment here, but would come, so. And we have a second. Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ally, would you just, on these, just make a note where we've sort of verbally said we need some comments so that it doesn't fly away? Thank you. We're going to hold on the housing until towards the end of the month. Solar overlay district, I would assume there we'd want to wait until the planning board weighed in, or do we want to? Okay. I have not contacted Mr. McClure, but that was one where I think we wanted to hear from him again. So I will do that and get that scheduled. Go ahead.
Do you know if the existing pools have to be closed? The ones he's proposed that are for boats in the future?
No,
Okay,
they
Nope.
will not.
They just become a non-conforming use in the zones.
okay.
Judith Wagner's feasibility study creation of residential rental registration. I heard from her. She was one of the people, and she's perhaps watching again tonight, that was watching last night. Her article goes beyond the short-term rental, and
Correct.
it actually asks for all registration.
Correct.
So I guess the question is, if this makes sense, do we need to have a committee look at it, or can this be, can we put this in the hands of whatever body is going to end up having to do the short-term rental and just include all rental housing?
So they're gonna inspect the housing?
That's what it
Not
says.
sure she's asked, I
That's
guess
what it
she is
says in the
asking for
article.
inspection, yeah.
Well, I
Seems like a huge task, talk about money.
right, which would be presumably paid for by permit fees or licensing fees of some sort. But this is just a feasibility study. I don't think that the town, I don't think anybody has a really good handle on how big our rental market is, or what the problems might be in those rental homes, apartments, all those sorts of things. I don't think it's a bad idea to at least engage in a discussion about what types of regulation might be necessary.
Some other communities have started to do this already and passed some really simple things like having an inspection to make sure there are CO2 detectors, smoke detectors, and
Yeah.
egress.
Right.
And they pay $50 and you get a certificate.
Yeah. Set up a phone number or an email address or a website. Where can renters go if they're having issues? Where can neighbors go if they're having, it might not behoove a renter to complain to a tenant who's only there for a week, but it might be nice to keep a log if one property consistently has properties. These are the types of things that I think this feasibility study committee could investigate. There's lots of good examples around the country about how to do this, and it's past time that I think Nantucket does it.
So the purpose is the town wishes to determine the feasibility of creating a residential rental facilities registration, inspection, and certification system. And it won't be until 2020. Annual
Okay.
town meeting on 2020 would be the results.
There's a significant expense though with this, in terms of, do we have somebody who can do that?
You mean
No.
do the
Do the
feasibility
inspection.
study or do the
The
inspections?
inspection.
Well, I think if we
Does
do,
it make sense to do the feasibility study if
We're
there's
not gonna
no,
fund the
there's no funding to
inspection.
do the inspection
Well,
down the road?
the funding would be something like, everybody who wants to rent their property year-round pays $25 a year, $100 a year, who knows what it is. But who wants to rent short-term, maybe you pay a different fee. Or maybe everybody pays the same fee. I have no idea what this is, but there's many more households that rent all or a portion of the properties than I think most people realize. I think there's a built-in funding mechanism if it's determined that any of this needs to be done.
But
But you're right, it probably does require finding or not finding, hiring a new employee or new employees to do these things.
There's no amount requested on this, though, for
No.
how much the feasibility study is going to cost.
I think it's anticipated it would be volunteer labor.
Oh,
Right, volunteer labor that would say things like, Palm Springs did this. This is what we'd like to do. You know,
Not
and
so
I
bad, though.
think that's a decent place to start.
Yeah.
And again, it could come back and we say, no, we've got it all covered. But I think after you do a little digging, you'd find out that we don't have it all covered. Nobody's doing health and safety checks on year-round rentals.
So they're not
So,
asking.
so volunteer labor for the feasibility study committee and presumably time and, just another thing on Libby or somebody in Libby's group's.
Board of Health, the
Agenda.
Planning Board, and the Affordable
Housing
Housing
Trust
Trust
Fund,
Fund
Yeah.
Board.
Cue the government study committee. She might need a bigger office.
Just curious, why wouldn't this go to the real estate committee?
Because it's not the real estate committee, it's called the real estate conveyance committee. And by the way, don't ask them if we should or should not convey property. It's only after we've determined that we should or
Right.
should not do
Did
they
they
give
look
us
at
their
it?
input
They'll tell us
on
that
the
it's
price.
$5,000.
Right.
Yes, I remember that from last time. Okay.
I think
There are a
Ron
lot
has
of help.
something to say on this.
Or
So
not.
it's hard to say no to a study. The outcome, though, of the study could say, we need 3 people to do this. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
out of the top. And when you're not compliant, here's what's going to happen to you.
Right, there's the,
That's the part that's.
But
So,
but those things would require a future town meeting to vote those things.
okay, just making sure we,
Yeah. I
this
mean,
is just the study to say, here's what we found. And here's what we could do.
I'm
I mean,
assuming it's
we've
gonna
done
have
many a housing
recommendations.
study that would have cost the town millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to do all of the things that were recommended, and we didn't do any of those things. So that could happen here. You could say that sounds like it'd be too much trouble. Let's not do it.
Or too expensive.
Yeah.
So what's the pleasure? It sounds like we're sort of trending in the direction of
Motion to adopt.
saying, let's adopt, have the committee.
I wonder if there's anybody in the public who'd like to speak about this one. Is there any thoughts on anybody in the public?
Trying to get Mr. Bamber to speak.
Yeah, I thought maybe he might.
Okay,
Motion to adopt.
we have a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, let the record show that Mr. Williams is opposed. Okay,
That was an enthusiastic vote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just sounds like more government. Another permit.
Another permit.
the next article is Ms. Williams' complaint committee.
Here she is. She's here.
Oh, that's your sister.
Would you like to, just make sure you're at one microphone, identify yourself and your address, and actually, if you wouldn't mind, go there. That way, those people at home can see you.
Teresa Williams, 61 Pulpus Road. And I know that
Just
you...
step up a little closer, yeah. Pull it down, just pull it down.
Okay. I'm good at this. I'm here to answer any questions. I know there's been some discussion about this already.
All right, so let me start off. Could you just give us a little background on what sort of the motivating factor to put this together?
Yes.
Sort of,
The reasoning behind
sort of
why-
the extra government. I mean, I would call it an extra governmental entity to do what we supposedly pay people to do, but.
Right, well, that's the point. I have a settlement agreement with the town of Nantucket, and that came about in 2014. It had to do with the school. It was not honored. I went to the town administrator, the board of selectmen, the school committee, the superintendent of the school, and found out that nobody is responsible for anybody else. So I went to town meeting last year and asked to create a board for people like me who have unresolved issues with the town, and nobody is accountable to me for not honoring an agreement that I have with the town, a legal agreement. The town voted to send it to the government study committee, and I met with them. And when I met with them, there was some confusion because what they said to me was that the town, when they voted for me to meet with them so that we could move forward with the article and create it, so I guess what I had proposed was not legal, so I needed the wording to be changed. They were not helpful. They told me that that at town meeting, the voters were confused about what they were voting for, so it never moved forward again. So once again, I'm standing in front of you. I still am in the same situation I was before. So what I want to do is create a group that can help resolve an issue for someone like me. I'm, grew up in Nantucket, just moving along in life, and I'm in a situation that nobody can address, nobody can help me with. I followed all the rules. I did everything I was supposed to do. And when the town reneged on their settlement agreement with me, that was hung out to dry. So that's why I want to create a committee that I can go to, or anybody can go to who has an issue with anybody in town, and get it resolved. Because I'm still standing in front of you today with an unresolved issue that cost me a second mortgage on my home, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I followed all the rules and the town didn't.
So, if I heard you correctly, you have a legally binding agreement,
Yes,
and by implication, have you pursued remedy through the courts?
yes.
And did you get a judgment?
Well, I went through the DESE, through the school, and they said that the school was required to pay for my son to go to a private school. But this SPED director said the school was not appropriate based on a lie that she made up, that I proved to be a lie. And they told me after that they couldn't help me because the town had to pay for the school, but the town did not pay for the school. So they say the town has to pay, the town doesn't pay. I lose placement in the school, my son's back at public school, and I'm still standing here after doing everything that I was supposed to do as a parent and more, yet I'm in front of you today, unresolved. I've run out of money to continue a legal battle, so.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate some background comments. Denise?
I'm Denise Cronow. We haven't met. Thank you for being here. The Contract Review Committee looks at organizations that apply for funding from the town. And one of the organizations we met with this year is Cape Mediation. And Cape Mediation provides mediation services for issues such as this for free. They have volunteer mediators who will put both aggrieved parties on either side of the table and walk through the issues and try to get to resolution. So I didn't know if you've attempted to work with somebody like Cape Mediation or if you knew about them.
I did not know about them, but I've already gone through the process and have an agreement with Michael Kozar that was signed, saying that they would pay for my son to go to private school after I proved that the town could not provide him with an education. So I'm not sure.
No, my comment is Cape Mediation potentially could step in and do for you what this committee would effectively do the same
Okay,
thing.
so if I had a problem with the health department, would they also mediate? Or,
I think you have to I was just
Well,
asking
yes.
if you tried to find someone else who could step in versus forming a committee.
well, I think that the committee is because I'm not the only one with a problem with the town. So if you have a problem with any other entity of the town, when you follow the law and you do the right thing, and then the town doesn't, there's gotta be, unless these people mediate for everybody, whether it be a building,
I believe they do. They
Hell.
just take two parties that can't get to agreement and
And
put them in a room
put 'em
and sort
together.
it out.
and so is that, when I go to the town, how come they don't suggest that to me?
I don't know that the town would know to suggest it. This was the first year they've appeared in Nantucket, as I'm aware of. I mean, they do mediation on Nantucket, but I don't know how widely known they are. This is the first I had heard of them as well.
Okay,
So I don't know
That
how
could be
well
helpful,
known
but-
of a resource. I'm not trying to offer you a solution. I'm just trying to offer you that rather than, potentially rather than starting a committee, maybe there's another way of there's a resource available that might work. I don't know enough to say it will. So just trying to be helpful.
thank you. It sounds like it might or might not be helpful,
Yeah, I don't know enough, Teresa, to know.
but I think that a committee like this would be helpful, because I'm not the only person, and it's not just with the school. You know, when you're fighting, when people are fighting you and they've got the town's income, and I've run out of money, and they're using my money to fight me as well. It just seems unfair, whether when I went to town meeting, people came up to me afterward, dozens of people, and were like, I don't know what happened to you, but it's horrible, and it shouldn't have to happen to somebody who's just doing the right thing, because somebody is doing the wrong thing.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a comment? My name is Peter Schaefer. Looking at your warrant in terms of the power that you're giving this committee, there's a lot of legal things that you're giving, that you'd want them to be able to do.
Yes,
You're having people that probably don't have a legal background, certainly don't have the right to enforce anything legally. So it really doesn't, I don't see where it would, I understand your problem, I sympathize 100%, but I don't see how this committee really could do anything for your specific subject, other than discuss it and say, we agree with her, and that's it. I mean, they're not gonna have money, they're not gonna have any sort of legal power, so.
well, one of the questions I asked at the government study committee was, the town attorney, who's he working for? And they told me he was working for me, the citizen taxpayer,
Who told you that?
at the government study committee.
Who? Because that just sounds like completely the wrong thing. The town council works for the town, capital T, of Nantucket.
Well, I asked him if he worked for the town administrator, and they said he's there for the people. And
Yeah,
I
the
said, well,
people
it's
with a
very
big
hard
P.
to
Yeah.
access him.
Not for the individuals of the town. I mean, town council certainly doesn't
no,
work
that's not
for the
what I mean.
finance committee.
So if there was a committee, could he not be involved because he works for the town of Nantucket?
Yeah, my understanding is that absolutely not. The town council could not help represent you against the town of Nantucket.
That's correct.
No, he would work
For the
with the
town.
committee that was established.
Not,
No.
no, he would represent the
He would
town
represent the town.
as on opposite sides of an issue from you.
Okay, from the government study committee, that's what they led me to believe, that he was, the town lawyer worked for the people of Nantucket. Not as an individual, because I'm not saying I
Right.
would use him to sue the town, but he represents us not the
Indirectly
town
in that he
administration.
works for the town.
Yeah,
I
I think
think
he's trying to
indirectly. I mean, he-
protecting the interests of the capital T town of Nantucket.
and its
You know.
institutions.
Okay, so that's what we discussed. When I asked
that
them,
wrong.
because I said, you can't, when you're trying to do an article, it's impossible to see the town attorney, and they said, yes, he's available to the public, 2 days in October. And so I
Yeah.
said, well, who does he work for? And that's what they told me, he represents me and all of you,
So perhaps there's
getting off track.
apples and oranges here. So the town council is made available by the town to citizens to help craft articles, and that's a couple of days in the fall, as you pointed out. The town council represents the institutions of the town. So, he will be on the side, or she will be on the side of the school board or the town manager or
Department of Public Works, whoever.
Department of Public Works, and if you as a citizen have a particular grievance, you are not getting representation from the against the town. You're not getting representation from town council. He will represent the institution of the town. So I'm sorry that perhaps you were misinformed by the study committee, but I think that Denise actually, if in rereading what you have here, you're fundamentally looking at a mediation group with some powers which may or may not be possible under charter, but a professional mediation groups are great. They're professional. We're not going to find a group of people on Nantucket that are professional mediators or have the experience that and I think we have all heard, at least anecdotally, stories similar to yours, particularly around children and the schools and particular needs they might have. I would really urge you to
I can get that information. to
look
Teresa.
into
I
this.
can send it to Cliff, and you can forward it. to us.
And I personally would be very happy to hold on making any decisions on this if you would commit to doing some follow-up to see whether that is an avenue for you to get resolution of this.
Okay, and I'm gonna go back to town meeting last year. So when they voted on this, the town voted to move it forward.
I mean, as far as I know, your only remedy is to go to court against the town. I mean, to try to get a judgment enforced.
No, but I'm
But-
talking about the article, when I
Oh.
went,
Is
they voted it to.
is this the same text of the article that you had passed last year, or that was passed at the town meeting? I mean, I asked because the language here doesn't obligate anybody to do anything. It says the article would establish a committee. It doesn't say who's to appoint them or when or why or how.
Right, which was what I thought when the town voted, and that's what everybody that I spoke to thought too. The government study committee was going to help me develop that.
Right.
I think it states it in there on the next page. There's 2 pages, isn't it?
I have one page. Well, I see
the one page
the
is
article
the
would
article,
establish a
and then
committee
there's
of
a
5
page
members. It would be made up of residents and on and on. But it doesn't say, the time period within which any body would have to appoint these people.
There's
I just
some-
mean, the way it's written, it's easy for somebody to say, oh, I see that town meeting wanted to do that, but there was no mechanism to do it.
So help me, so what is the town government or the study committee, what are they in place for? 'Cause
I don't know. It was almost disbanded a few years ago. It's consistently understaffed. I don't know who they report to or how often.
I mean, I know who they were because I went there.
I-
They told me they were there to help me.
It says annually there'll be elections,
Yeah.
like the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, there's a second page.
Yeah, no,
You've got it in front
I'm
of
looking
you.
at it.
Yeah.
The elections would take place just as the BOS elections do annually. But that doesn't determine who's going to constitute the first board.
So I guess back
think it
to
does.
when I said it's almost impossible for a citizen to come forward and place an article because when you can meet with somebody 2 days a week or 2 days a year.
But that's
That's
not completely accurate, because I know people have emailed or reached out otherwise to town council, and they've been available other times than those 2 days.
So I can email him and get him on board with me. So
Get him on board with you? No, likely not. Not for this
not
measure.
on board, but to help me with the language. 'cause
Yeah,
that's-
probably some date around the 2 dates that he made himself available. I expect he would have been available, yes. I don't think at this late stage that you're likely to find any help. But,
Okay.
you know, every year, not every year, but consistently over the last 5 years, we see a slow uptick in the number of citizen warrant articles that are legally or crafted in the proper legal form, in large part because town council makes themselves available to help citizens craft the articles. I know that midweek isn't convenient for everybody, but it's not something, availability of council is not guaranteed anywhere. It's a service that the town provides under the contract with town council.
I think I brought that up yesterday, maybe it would be more helpful to have this on a Saturday, because there's no reason for, if you have all these questions about legality, that could have been resolved by town council. Yes, it's more helpful to people, that's one of the big complaints I get.
Yeah, it is, but, you know, it's not part of the contract that they have.
At this time, and potentially to be changed in the future.
I'm confused about something. So this did or didn't pass last year?
It did pass to go to government study committee.
But
so
what does
they
that
could
really
help
mean?
Establish the committee.
I think the government study committee is supposed to oversee the charter and recommendations for the town and how it runs and how we establish new bylaws or rules or make recommendations for things.
Correct.
Even then, you can still change the charter. Maybe I'm wrong. That was another
You can, but
question.
you have to vote. We did change the charter when we went from Board of Selectmen to
No,
Select.
but I
No,
mean
we
to
haven't
make
done that yet,
changes
either.
right now to the charter.
Oh, they just didn't do it. Yeah, that was
Not
gonna be
yet.
my next question. What happens if we vote on stuff and then it just doesn't happen?
Well, it sounds like this was voted on and it was referred to the Town Government Study Committee,
And nothing's happened.
which is supposed to meet every 5 years and undertake a certain set of responsibilities. You know, I honestly don't know what their cycle is. It looks like it was
They meet every month.
founded in 2010, and then every 5 years it's supposed to do something.
It came back around.
But that would make it the 2015 and then 2020. So, you know, maybe they're on schedule. I have no idea, actually, when and how we're supposed to hear from the Town Government Study Committee. Did they tell you when they plan to take any formal action on what you've presented?
They did not.
And so is this just a reproposal of the same article that you had on town meeting last year?
Yes.
I mean, it may be this is doing what it's supposed to be doing. These are serious people on the, you know, Rick Atherton's here, John Brescher's the chair,
Yeah.
Tucker Holland, Linda Williams. I mean, I don't expect that these people are shirking their responsibility here.
Oh, I didn't say that.
So, you know, it may be that this is already doing what it's supposed to do. It's gone to the Town Government Study Committee, and then something will come out of what their work process is. Do you know that that's not the case?
I have not heard from them. And so once again, it just came to where we are today. So
Maybe we should ask for an update.
I
Well-
resubmitted the article.
It's pretty clear to me, maybe not to everyone else, that in order to create a body of the town that's going to be able to bind the Board of Selectmen and other department heads to do anything,
There's a
we're going to have to
process.
change the charter.
Yes, I'm sure that's
And
true.
that, I know, requires a recommendation from the Town Government Study Committee to town meeting. And I don't know what the threshold for a vote is, but I think it's 2/3. You know, it's a major change.
I don't think it takes a recommendation. I think it's either or.
What does that mean?
That means the government study committee could recommend it, or 2/3 vote of the town meeting could just adopt it.
I don't think that's how amendments to the town charter happen.
Okay.
I mean, didn't, we just voted on an amendment to the, we just voted to change the town charter.
But this is this contemplates creating a whole new body, a
Not
whole
language.
new deliberative body. This is not just changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
And actually, the charter can only be changed at the state level, which is
Yes.
why it hasn't been changed to select board throughout the
Yeah.
I
entire
don't think
charter.
you're changing the charter, you make an amendment to it, because you're not changing the Board of Selectmen, you're not changing the town administrator.
No, this is creating a whole, this
No,
is
I'm just
reorganizing the whole
saying,
power
just speaking
structure
to-
and saying
to
now we
other
have the Board
point.
of Selectmen, we have town meeting, the Board of Selectmen, and we have the town manager. And now we have this whole other thing on top of it. This is a fundamental change to the town power structure.
Well, is it needed?
In my opinion, no, it's not.
So do you believe that things are being done correctly and people's questions are being answered and we're moving forward?
You're asking me to weigh in, I think, on the specific facts of this case, which I don't have. I honestly don't know what happened. You know, I think that something bad happened here, but I have no way of knowing that to be true.
I can just give you the experience I had from the very beginning 8 years ago with the airport, where it was me against the Board of Selectmen, it was me against the town manager, it was me against the airport manager. And not until the Inspector General got involved did they finally realize that things out there were awry, that there was, in the end, $14 million missing. And yet nobody was ever indicted, nothing was ever done to those individuals. I've had experiences with the building department where I had my citizens article. They still take me to court periodically to try and find me, but, and I can't get anybody to resolve that issue. So it just seems to be a stalemate. And unless you have lots of money, you don't want to waste a lot of money with lawyers, you're fighting the very town that you're, like my sister said here, that you're sponsoring, you're using your tax dollars. I mean, we even attacked those people out at Surfside through eminent domain. I don't know who gave the authority to do that, when they were trying to take their house a couple of years back, the airport commission. So it was just, things like that just seem to me that can be all resolved with this mediation group. That would be great, but other than that, I've never heard of any board previously that you could go to and say, hey, this is crazy. I'm being attacked by a municipality or the federal government. You don't have a chance.
But outside a contractual obligation that doesn't exist, the town won't be bound by arbitration. I don't think you're likely to find that the town's going to willfully enter into binding arbitration with anybody.
Then I guess then we really need to decide what we're going to do as a town. If the town is not going to bargaining in good faith and they're just going to act like a corporate punk. That's what I discussed that with Rick Atherton. I mean, corporations, if you want to go fight GE, what are they going to do to you? It doesn't mean you're right or wrong. They're just going to crush you in court because they have more money than you do. So where do they get relief?
I think that's what the court system is for. I understand that
You've
it
never
doesn't.
been to court. It's all about lawyers making money. It's
Yeah.
not about
Well,
right and wrong.
I wish that were the case.
It is the case.
No, I wish it were the case that I hadn't been to court. I understand it's not a perfect system.
Mr. Bamber, did you want to say something or not?
No, I just wanted to come and just see how things were going and
Okay.
just listen in. I mean, I never got on any committees, but I can see so many things that the town is doing well. And I
Okay.
told the select.
If you're going to continue to talk, come up to the microphone.
I'm
Okay.
glad I came anyway. And you fellows are doing all of it. Great, so
Great.
that's great.
Thank you.
Anyway, the paving subcommittee that came out of this body right here did a great job of, and it worked so well. I mean, there's got to be some kind of entity, at least I think, to outside of the Board of Selectmen or the town, but we had no power. I was on that board. We reported. It was given to the Martha Coakley at the time, and there was little to no response, which was crazy. But
Any committee that was formed that had power would have to be voted in. couldn't appoint people if they're gonna have more power than the select. board.
Right, well, I think they're voted in on this committee.
Would somebody be willing on our committee to contact, who's the chair of this government committee?
John Brescher.
Contact John. John's an attorney, Glidden. Would you contact him and find out where Teresa's issue lies with that committee so we have an understanding? And we'll hold on doing anything on this, Teresa.
And Teresa, if you give me your email,
Yeah,
I can send you the details, the contact information for Cape Mediation.
Can we also hear from town council about this specific issue?
Just write it on there.
on
Thank
the
you.
complaints committee or on her particular issue?
On her particular issue?
Sure, I'd be happy to make the inquiry if John would, or appropriate attorney would
Yeah.
weigh in.
I'd like to find out where
Let me
the
just make sure I
town
have
stands
it.
on this. It sounds
It
like a
is,
citizen's been wronged, and I think we deserve to know about it. I mean, if our role here is
send you an email.
fiduciary for the town, and there's potential liability here such that we're talking about fundamentally changing the system of government or the form that we have, then we ought to know what's causing those things.
Okay, I will do that, and I will endeavor to report back by
So David,
on Monday.
I'm sorry, David, who are you gonna talk to?
I'll talk to John Giorgio.
Oh, you're gonna do Georgia?
I'll do Giorgio. You should just ping pressure
Okay.
to see where the town government committee has come out.
Yep.
Less on her particular issues and more on the
Committee
committee
itself. The
and the
complaints
result
committee.
of last year's town meeting. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Okay. The rest are zoning until we get down to authorization of lease, the Sconset Bluff. I did tell Cohen yesterday that we wouldn't take up any of his articles. I will say that I believe that there are some Nantucket people that have an issue that want to appear before our committee on the land acquisition.
The Washington Avenue?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is as weird as it may sound, apparently, none of the abutters have been notified about this article.
Oh,
So
it's not Washington Avenue in town? It's Washington Avenue in
it's in
Nantucket?
Nantucket, and it's
didn't know there was more than
Washington
one.
Avenue. There is Washington, and then there are places between those letter streets where it's actually not built.
Okay,
And so the proponent, who just purchased their property apparently, is desirous of having the street abandoned by the town.
so,
And then they would acquire it because the way the yard sales work, they are the ones that automatically have right to the land. When it goes to the real estate committee, who decides that it's worth $4,500.
okay.
So,
Oh, an expensive one.
and this is kind of weird because there are abutters on both sides. So there are multiple abutters, and none of the abutters apparently have been notified that this article is even in front of them. So, anyway,
It's interesting.
somebody will come and tell us, along with Mr. Cohen, about their interest in the
Okay.
in this. So,
I wasn't here for the sense of the meeting whales, and I have a hard time reading the handwriting. Based on the criteria of the World Cetacean Alliance?
Yes.
Okay.
That reads like a take no action sort of article to me.
Come on, for the whales?
They eat a lot of fish. You can save a lot of fish by killing a whale.
To promote responsible human cetacean interaction, education, and policy, and the celebration of
I think
Nantucket's
I think
history of
I think it
whales.
has no financial relationship to the town whatsoever, and the town meeting can vote any way they want on that.
Massachusetts Whale Trail.
and for those of you who are watching at home, what I'm about to say, I'm being facetious. But given my family history of whaling going back way when, we are actually family-wise looking for a permit to go whaling again. I'm being facetious, all of you folks out there.
We're gonna become a World Whale Heritage Site.
Well, that sounds like it might be a boon.
I think the NHA could pick up the flag and just run with that one.
Okay, then.
I literally do not know how many calls my office receives from whale enthusiasts who want to come to the island, and they ask if we are World Heritage Site certified. I don't know how many calls we've received. Could be
Are you
more
being
than
facetious,
could be
Stephen?
more than zero.
It appears he is. That would be my assessment from this chair.
I was not being, I just don't think it's a FinCom one way or the other, but if the sense of the committee is, it's something that's relative to Nantucket, I'm happy to vote for it too. I just.
Yeah,
I don't think it costs us anything to vote for it or
Exactly.
take no action either way.
yeah, and maybe the comment is we don't think this has any direct impact on the finances of the town, but given our history of slaughtering whales, maybe we ought to do something.
We're
in the-
desirous of continuing along with that.
No. The opposite.
Yeah, the opposite.
Yeah.
All right.
Just think when there's an opportunity to potentially do some good that doesn't cost you any money, you do it. Even maybe when it does cost you some money before
Well, that's a
somebody
sign.
reminds
Try
me
a
of that.
sign that's gonna come with this.
Yeah.
All right, well, then I'll second any article you want to put, any motion you want to make.
What it doesn't necessarily bound the town of Nantucket. Never mind.
Motion to
This doesn't-
adopt.
Second.
Take a bold stand here.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Any opposed?
Yeah, I'm opposed. Only for one reason. The reason is there might be a cost involved here that we don't know about. I mean, I know it's only a committee,
We can put that in the motion.
but yeah.
As long
It's
as
not, they're not forming a committee.
Okay,
Whale,
right.
the whale
Are
is
they?
just a.
No, it's
No.
the sense of the meeting vote,
The sense
right?
of
Yeah, I guess it is, you're
So-
right.
So the town meetings would say, we love
Yeah.
whales, and
Also, just
It says we
a
have to fit the criteria.
point here that there is a newly established whale trail, Massachusetts Whale Trail. So
Be kinda funny if they
do
left
some
us off
research on that on your own.
Our next meeting is on
Monday.
Monday night,
Monday.
and I thank you all for your attendance and good discussion. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's where those things are.
Hope you turn that off.